Good morning, everyone. It's very good to see all of you here, and I want to extend a special welcome to our friends and family who are visiting with us this morning. We are so glad that you are here, and we hope you can stay afterwards and enjoy some great food and fellowship downstairs. As I explained this morning in Bible class, we're going to take a break from our series through Mark. Ordinarily, we're going through the Gospel of Mark, and we're getting to see Jesus as he's entering into Jerusalem and the ministry there. But I wanted to take a break and just look at something that I hope will be encouraging to all of you, and it's been on my heart the last couple weeks. So we're going to be looking at walking by faith. And I remember when I was a young man first entering into ministry, I had a multi-step plan and I felt in control. We went abroad, we entered into a hostile mission field. I outlined the cultural and political challenges that we would face, I studied population demographics, and I wanted to account for every possible variable. I think this is how we tend to try to handle overwhelming challenges in life. We try to take control of them. And there's certainly nothing wrong with taking responsibility for the things that God has entrusted to us. But then at that time in my life, God began to teach me something about what it means to follow Jesus. We see this here. For we walk by faith and not by sight. He began to show me that his people don't live by what they see, by what they can touch and plan for and control, but by the eternal things that they cannot see. And this is sometimes one of the most difficult challenges about being Christian. It's so easy to be distracted by what's in front of us, and so we forget what's coming, what we are seeking with our life. And so the last couple weeks, I've been thinking about what it means to walk by faith, to live in pursuit of more than what is in front of us. And my mind went to Jesus describing his followers like the wind. You may be familiar with this passage. He said, "The wind blows where it pleases, and you hear its sound. But you don't know where it comes from or where it is going. And so it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit." The wind blows over this world as part of this world so that we feel and we sense its movement, but it seemingly moves with a will that is separate from this world. If one can detach oneself from our modern knowledge about such things, one can place oneself in Jesus' first century metaphor and therefore understand his point. Those who are born of the Spirit move within this world by a will that does not belong to this world, and so are unpredictable to this world. And this started me thinking about Abraham's life. Let's take a real quick look at this. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, Haran's son, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years and died in Haran. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your land, your relatives, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse anyone who treats you with contempt. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abraham left Ur of the Chaldeans, which was the land that would one day become Babylon, the great empire, and they were the eventual captors of his promised descendants. He then traveled northwestward to Haran through what would become the land of Assyria, which became known as one of the most brutal captors of his descendants. They treated them very harshly. And then God led them across vast and diverse lands, and he never possessed the ultimate promised inheritance during his lifetime. He even eventually ended up in Egypt, which became the longest captor of his people, over 400 years. How many times would he have questioned the rugged paths that he traversed in life, wondering how those paths could possibly bring him home to the promised land? I'm sure sometimes he wondered how perhaps has he gotten off track? Where am I? Is God still looking after me to deliver the promises that he has made? And yet Abraham followed a will that did not belong to this world, and so it was quite unpredictable to this world. If you had told me the beginning of the story, which we just read, and said, now tell me, how do you think this story is going to play out? I would have said something like a straight line to Canaan and conquer the land, and there you go. And God would have given all of Abraham's descendants like Superman powers, right? This is not how it worked. 400 years in captivity in Egypt. Not only did Abraham not receive the promises, but neither did his direct offspring immediately receive either. And so the writer of Hebrews comments on this point. He says, by faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed and set out for a place that was going to receive an inheritance. He went out even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he stayed as a foreigner in the land of promise, living in tents as did Isaac and Jacob, co-heirs of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, even Sarah herself, when she was unable to have children, received power to conceive offspring, even though she was past the age, since she considered that the one who had promised was faithful. Therefore, from one man, in fact, from one as good as dead, came offspring as numerous as the stars of the sky and as innumerable as the grains of sand along the seashore. These all died in faith, although they had not received the things that were promised. But they saw them from a distance, greeted them, and confessed that they were foreigners and temporary residents on the earth. Now those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. And if they were thinking about where they came from, they would have had an opportunity to return. But they now desire a better place, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God. He has prepared a city for them. We each traverse our own journeys in pursuit of an eternal home under the same conviction as Sarah that God is faithful. Like Abraham, we obey the call that we have received from God. And we each set out according to that call for an inheritance whose architect is God Himself, an inheritance that is not possessed in this life. And sometimes our life doesn't make sense. Like Sarah, whose husband was as good as dead, we have to rely on the faithfulness of God to get us where we're meant to go. But through faith, we see the reality of what God has promised from a distance. And we confess that this world is not our home. We're just passing through. Because we are seeking our eternal dwelling with God. And we know He is faithful to bring us into that eternal dwelling. Scripture even tells us that the world will sometimes scoff and will ridicule us. They are surprised that you don't join them in the same flood of wild living, and they slander you. Sometimes the direction, the path that our life runs does not make sense to those who are seeking the things of this world. And so they might call into question the wisdom by which we live our life or what have you. But we live the way we live because we have obeyed the call of God. God has a will for your life. God has called you into that will. And so you, just like Abraham, have left everything to follow God and pursue that will for your life. So just like with Abraham walking by faith, if you know the story of Abraham, it does not mean that things don't get messy. Very oftentimes, Abraham's life was quite messy. And walking by faith certainly doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes along the way. Nor does it even mean that we understand why God takes us along the rugged way that we traverse. I'm sure Abraham did not understand why would God take him into Egypt. After all, Egypt is not the promised land for him. Instead, walking by faith means that we don't need to know why He takes us the way He does because we trust Him. It means that our confidence is in God's faithfulness to get us home, even when we make mistakes. So walking by faith means that our focus is on walking in step with the Holy Spirit rather than trying to control our circumstances. I found out the hard way in ministry when I began, and I tried to outline and define my ministry in every single aspect. I thought, I'm going to get this under control, and God said, really? So that's how you think? I remember we were staying temporarily with my mother-in-law while we were preparing to go abroad, and she's got this big table, and I had papers everywhere spread out over this thing, and I was looking at demographics, and I was planning outreach. I don't think a single paper came true. I don't think a single one of those papers that I was outlining on actually worked. God has other things in store for you. But what it does mean is that when our most reliable plans fall apart, we seek to obey the call of God. What is it He has called us to? Listen for His calling. It means that we live by a will that does not belong to this world because we're seeking an eternal home that isn't of this world. And so walking by faith means walking in the Spirit, the same way a child simply follows their father's voice. Finally, my little Salome is getting old enough where she can start to respond. I'm not sure how much she understands the words coming out of my mouth, but I did say, come here. And she's able to turn. I call her Salome, come here. She's able to turn and start kind of crawling. And she's kind of learned from their baby this little like sidestep thing. And so she kind of does this and she crawls over to me. She hears my voice, right? And she follows. We won't find peace in trying to control our circumstances. In fact, the attempt to try to control our circumstances is oftentimes quite the opposite of finding peace, especially when they don't work out. And we won't find peace in asking why. Why, Lord, am I in Egypt? Why, Lord, have you brought me this way? Why is the path so rugged and hard? But instead, our peace is found in the simple faith of, yes, Lord, your will be done. Today is Friendship Sunday. It's a day that I want to make as much time and room available for friendship. So we're going to close with these words. I understand this is an uncharacteristically short lesson for me, but we want to provide time for love and friendship this Sunday. So I want to close with this passage from Jesus. And since I'm going short this week, I get the time for next week, right? Is that how it works? I understand. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. You'll find peace in this. Listen to the voice of God. It doesn't matter if you've made a mistake. It doesn't matter if the going is difficult. Listen for the voice of God and say, yes, Lord. Follow that voice that you know to be Jesus Christ. So as we now turn our hearts to worship God and fellowship, I want to ask our elders who are present with us, if you will please stand. I think everybody knows you, but please stand as I want to invite you into Jesus' way of life. If you have struggles that you need help carrying, or if you want to respond to the good news about Jesus by being baptized today, then I invite you to come forward now or after services to find me or one of our elders, and as we help you along with this. So please come and worship our God and our King.